At my parents' anniversary dinner, my sister got a $22,000 European cruise, my brother got a brand new motorcycle, and I got a folder full of their overdue bills. Mom smirked, "Take the damn bills. You were born to pay." I just smiled. By morning, both cars I had been paying for were gone, and Dad found one notice taped to the garage door. The envelope on Fern's plate was cream-colored with a gold seal. I saw it from across the table before anyone opened their mouths. My parents had booked the back room at Rossini's for their 35th wedding anniversary, the restaurant with the cloth napkins and the candles that smell like vanilla, and the bread they bring in a basket before you ask. 12 people at the table. Family, a few neighbors, my parents' friends from church. Judith and Clint at the center, glowing the way people glow when the evening is organized around them. Fern opened her envelope first. She pulled out a booking confirmation. A 14-day European cruise. Rome, Barcelona, the Greek islands. Departure in June. Total cost printed at the bottom, $22,000. Fern screamed. She actually screamed in the restaurant, and then she hugged Judith so hard the chair scraped backward on the tile. Then Clint stood up and handed Mitch a small leather case. Inside was a key fob for a Harley-Davidson Sportster. Brand new. Mitch held the key up to the light, and the table erupted. People clapped. My mother beamed like she had just conducted an orchestra. I was sitting at the end of the table. I had driven 40 minutes to be there after a 9-hour shift running conduit through a warehouse ceiling. I was still wearing my work boots because I had not had time to change. My hands smelled like copper and PVC cement. I had showered at the job site, but I could still feel the dust in the creases of my knuckles. Fern was wearing a new dress. Mitch had on a jacket I had never seen before. I was the only person at the table with dirt under my fingernails. Judith reached under her chair and pulled out a manila folder. Not an envelope, not a case, not a wrap box with a ribbon, a manila folder. The kind you buy in a 10-pack at the office supply store for $3. She slid it across the tablecloth toward me, the way you slide a check across a restaurant table, face down, already knowing what it costs. "These need to be taken care of," she said. I opened it. Inside were 6 overdue bills. The water bill from my parents' house, 3 months behind. Their gas bill with a late fee circled in red. A past due notice from the homeowner's insurance company I had been paying for 3 years. A dental invoice for Clint with a balance of $840. A vet bill for the dog, and at the bottom, a handwritten note from Judith on lined paper, torn from a yellow legal pad that said, "Also, the truck inspection is due next month. Handle it." Handle it. 2 words, written the way you write a reminder on a Post-it note for someone who works for you. I looked at the bills. I looked at the envelope Fern was still holding, the cruise confirmation with $22,000 printed in small type at the bottom. I looked at the motorcycle key Mitch was turning over in his fingers like a lucky coin. Then I looked at Judith. She smirked. Not a smile, a smirk. The expression of a woman who has divided the world into people who give and people who receive, and who decided a long time ago which category each of her children belonged to. Her eyes were bright. She was enjoying this. She was enjoying the symmetry of it, the 2 golden envelopes and the 1 brown folder presented at the same table under the same light. As if fairness were a thing she had considered and deliberately rejected. "Take the damn bills, Wyatt," she said. "You were born to pay." The table shifted, not visibly, but I could feel it. 3 of my parents' friends exchanged a look across the centerpiece. One of them, a woman named Carol who has known my mother for 20 years, put her fork down and did not pick it up again. Porter, sitting 2 seats to my left, turned his head toward Judith so slowly it looked deliberate. Clint took a sip of wine. He did not look at me. Fern was studying her cruise itinerary as if the sentence her mother had just spoken did not require anyone's attention. Mitch was texting someone under the table. Nobody at that table said a word. Not one person turned to me and said, "That was not okay." I was the utility. You do not defend the utility. You pay the bill and forget the meter exists. I closed the folder. I put it on my lap. I finished my bread. I left $40 on the table for my share of the bill, said goodnight to Porter, and walked to my truck in the parking lot. I sat in the cab for 7 minutes with the folder on the passenger seat and my hands on the wheel. The folder was light. 6 pieces of paper and a handwritten note. It weighed almost nothing. But it was the heaviest thing I had carried out of that restaurant, heavier than the conduit I had been hauling all day, because it was the first time my mother had said out loud, in front of witnesses, what the family had been treating as policy for 6 years. You were born to pay. If you have ever sat at a family table and realized that your seat was not a chair but an invoice, you know exactly what that folder felt like in your hands. If stories like this feel like yours, you are listening to Family Secret Tales. I am a licensed electrician, journeyman card, 9 years in the trade. I work for a contractor called Hargrove Electric running commercial and residential wire. I am good at my job. I can run 200 feet of conduit in a ceiling without a single splice point, and I can read a panel schedule the way some people read a menu. My parents have never once asked me what I do. To them, I work with my hands. Fern sits at a desk with a computer, and that makes her professional. Mitch has been between jobs for 2 years, and that makes him creative. I crawl through ceilings, and that makes me the one who pays. 6 years ago, my parents needed a truck. Clint's credit was too low to qualify for financing. Judith's was worse. So I bought the truck in my name. The title and the loan were mine. Clint was supposed to reimburse me every month. Within 3 months, the reimbursement stopped and the lender was calling me because the payment was due. The truck is a 2019 Ford F-150. The loan is in my name. The title is in my name. The monthly payment is $580. Clint drives it every day as if it has always been his. He has never once referred to it as my truck. He calls it the truck. The way you talk about furniture that came with the house. 4 years ago, the same thing happened with Judith's SUV, a 2021 Chevy Equinox. Judith could not qualify for financing on her own, so the loan went in my name. The title went in my name. Same arrangement, same result. Judith missed 3 payments in the first 5 months. The lender called me. I took over. Monthly payment, $490. Judith drives it to the grocery store and the hair salon and church on Sundays, and she has never once offered to put gas money in my hand. Not once in 4 years. Then came the insurance. Their homeowner's policy lapsed because they stopped paying the premium. I picked it up so they would not lose coverage on the house. Then came the emergencies. Clint's dental work. The water heater. The vet. Speeding tickets. Fern's bridesmaid dress for a wedding I was not invited to. Mitch's phone bill when he let it lapse for the 3rd time. Each one arrived as a phone call or a text with the same tone. The tone of someone placing an order, not asking a favor. Wyatt, the water heater went out. Not can you help? Just the fact, delivered as an assignment, followed by silence until the check cleared. I kept a spreadsheet. I have kept it since the first truck payment. Every dollar. Every date. Every description. I kept it the same way I keep panel schedules, test records, and inspection notes at work, because I was trained to document what goes into a system and what comes out. The total, as of the night of the anniversary dinner, was $89,000. $89,000. Over 6 years. From a man who crawls through ceilings for a living. Paid to a family that handed him a folder of bills at a restaurant and told him he was born to do it. I did not yell. I did not call Judith that night. I did not text Clint or Fern or Mitch. I went home and sat at my kitchen table with the folder Judith had given me and opened my laptop and looked at the spreadsheet the way I look at a circuit diagram before I start pulling wire. I needed to see the whole system before I touched any part of it. The folder held 6 bills totaling about $3,400. Water, gas, insurance, dental, vet, truck inspection. Judith had handed me $3,400 in obligations at the same table where she handed Fern a $22,000 vacation and Mitch a brand new motorcycle. She had done it in front of 12 people and smiled while she did it. The math was not complicated. The math was the clearest thing I had ever seen. The next morning I was making coffee when my phone buzzed. A text from Judith. Except it was not meant for me. It was meant for Fern. Don't stress about the bills, sweetie. Wyatt will handle them. He always does, lol. Enjoy your trip planning. Love you. She had sent it to the family group chat by accident instead of Fern's private thread. I saw it at 7:14 in the morning with my coffee mug in my hand and the folder still on the kitchen counter where I had left it the night before. He always does, lol. That was the line that turned the folder from a humiliation into a document. Not the bills inside it. The text. Because the bills were rude. The text was policy. My mother had built a system where my money flowed in one direction and the family's gratitude flowed in every direction except mine. And she thought it was funny. She thought it was something you send with lol and 2 exclamation points. I called Porter. My father's brother. 56 years old. Retired pipe insulator. Lives alone in a townhouse he paid off in 2017 with 30 years of union wages and the kind of financial discipline that runs in the blood on my father's side, but skipped Clint entirely. Porter is the only person in my family who has ever asked me what a conduit bender is. He is the only person who came to see my apartment after I moved in. He showed up with a level and a stud finder and said, "You are an electrician. Your shelves better be straight." He helped me hang them. They are straight. When I finished and stepped back to look, Porter said, "You do good work, Wyatt. Same as your grandfather. He would have liked this apartment." That was 3 years ago, and it is still the best compliment I have ever received from a family member. I told Porter everything. The dinner, the folder, the spreadsheet, the text Judith sent to the wrong person, the $22,000 cruise and the motorcycle and the 6 bills and the sentence my mother said in front of 12 people at a restaurant where I was the only one wearing work boots. Porter listened the way he always listens, with long pauses and no interruptions and the occasional sound of a coffee mug being set down on a wooden surface. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. I could hear his kitchen clock ticking in the background. "How much are the cars worth?" he said. "The truck books at about $26,000. The SUV about $18,000. And they are in your name, both of them. Loans and titles. Then they are your property, Wyatt. They have always been your property. You do not need a lawyer to take back something that is already in your name. You need a tow truck and a storage lot. Is that legal?" I said. Not because I did not know the answer. Because I needed to hear someone I trusted say it. You own the vehicles. You are the titled owner and the loan holder. You have every right to take possession of your own property. What your parents have been doing is driving someone else's car with the owner's permission. You are revoking the permission. That is not theft. That is ownership. He paused. "Wyatt, I watched your mother hand you that folder. I was sitting 2 chairs away. I saw your face. I also saw that not one person at that table said a word, including me. And I have been thinking about that for 2 days. So let me say it now. What she did was wrong. And the fact that she did it in front of 12 people and none of us stopped her is also wrong. You have been carrying this family's bills for 6 years, and the only reward you have ever received is more bills. Take your cars back. Stop paying their household expenses. Then decide whether you want to keep the vehicles or sell them and clear the remaining loans. But do not feel guilty about it for 1 second. I almost let it go. I almost put the folder in the recycling bin and made the next payment and the one after that, the way I had been doing for 6 years. Because the rhythm of paying had become so automatic that stopping felt like pulling a wire out of a live panel. You stop paying and the lights go out. Not your lights. Theirs, and you have spent 6 years believing that their lights are somehow your responsibility. But the text was still on my screen. He always does, lol. And the folder was still on the counter with 6 bills inside it and my mother's handwriting on the note that said handle it. I closed the recycling bin lid and picked the folder back up. That afternoon, I called a licensed vehicle transport service. But before I scheduled anything, I sent copies of both titles and both loan agreements to a local attorney Porter recommended. He confirmed that I was the sole titled owner on both vehicles and that neither parent had any written ownership interest. He told me the important part was to recover my vehicles without confrontation and to let the licensed transport company determine how the pickup could legally be handled. I called the transport service and explained the situation. I gave them the VIN numbers, the plate numbers, and my title documentation for both vehicles. The dispatcher reviewed the ownership documents and said they could handle the pickup under their recovery procedures. He scheduled it for 4 o'clock in the morning. Both vehicles to be delivered to a secure lot on Route 9 where I had rented 2 spots under my name. I paid $340 for both tows. Then I sat at my kitchen table and typed a letter. 1 page. No threats, no insults, no legal language. Just numbers. The same way I write up a job estimate for a client, materials, labor, hours, total, at the top, financial support summary, Wyatt to Clinton Judith, 2019-2025. Below that, every category. Car payments, insurance premiums, emergency expenses, itemized by date and amount. Total, $89,000. At the bottom, 1 sentence. Effective today. All voluntary financial support is permanently discontinued. Both vehicles have been recovered to my possession as titled owner. I printed the letter. I put it in the manila folder Judith had given me at the anniversary dinner. The same folder. The same crease where she had bent it to fit under her chair. The bills were still inside. I added my letter on top of them, so that when Clint opened the folder, the first thing he would see was not an overdue gas bill, but 6 years of receipts for a life I had been funding without ever being asked whether I wanted to. I drove to my parents' house at 5:15 in the morning after the tow truck had already come and gone. The driveway was empty. The spots where the truck and the SUV had been parked for years were just concrete, 2 faded oil patches side by side, the ghosts of vehicles that were never theirs. The garage door was closed. I taped the folder to the center of it with packing tape, got back in my truck, and drove home. The April air was cold at that hour. I rolled the window down and let it hit my face. I did not feel victorious. I felt like a man who had just disconnected a circuit that should never have been wired in the first place. The power was still there. It just was not going to their house anymore. Clint found the folder at 6:40 when he walked outside to get the newspaper. I know the time because he called me at 6:43. 3 minutes. That is how long it takes a man to read 1 page of numbers and understand that the floor he has been standing on for 6 years was never the ground. It was someone else's back. Wyatt, where are the cars? His voice was tight, not angry yet. Confused. The voice of a man who has walked into a room and found the furniture missing. They are in storage. Both titles are in my name. They always have been. You cannot just take the cars. I can. I have the titles, I have the registrations, I have the loan statements. There is nothing on those vehicles that has your name on it, Dad. There never was. Silence. I could hear Judith in the background. She was saying something fast and high, and I could not make out the words, but I could hear the pitch, and I knew the pitch. It was the sound of a woman whose system had just failed. Your mother is upset, Clint said. She handed me a folder of bills at your anniversary dinner and told me I was born to pay. In front of 12 people, while Fern opened a $22,000 cruise envelope. You can tell her the folder is taped to the garage door. I used the same one. I almost said more. The spreadsheet was on my screen, and I could see every line, every date, every dollar, and the total at the bottom that was larger than most people's first mortgage. But the receipt of what I had paid was already in the folder on the door. The numbers did not need my voice. They needed his eyes. I hung up. The next 2 days were quiet in the way that a room is quiet before the wiring test. The current is live, but nothing has sparked yet. Judith called twice. I let both calls go to voicemail. The first message was 9 seconds of silence and then a hang-up. The second was Judith's voice saying, "Call me back, Wyatt. This is not over." I saved both voicemails. On Saturday, Clint and Judith drove to my apartment in Fern's car. Judith was in the passenger seat. Clint knocked on my door with the knuckles of a man who is used to being let in. I opened the door, but I did not invite them inside. We stood on my front step in the April air with the screen door between us. Clint started, "This has gone too far. We are your parents. You do not cut off your parents." Judith added, "You are punishing us because we gave your sister a nice gift. That is jealousy, Wyatt. That is not how we raised you." I almost stepped back and let them in. The pull was physical. 32 years of letting them into every room I have ever been in. Every apartment, every job site, every bank account. Clint's face had the expression of a man who truly believes that the person standing in the doorway owes him access. And part of me, the part that had been his son for 3 decades, still felt the debt. But the folder was on my counter, and the text was on my phone, and the spreadsheet was on my screen, and the debt was not mine. It had never been mine. "You handed me a folder of your unpaid bills at the same table where you gave Fern a $22,000 vacation," I said. "How did you pay for the cruise, Mom?" Judith did not answer. "How did you pay for the motorcycle?" Clint looked at the step. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. The concrete made a small grinding sound. "You somehow had money for a $22,000 cruise and a brand new Harley while I was paying for both vehicles you drove every day. Both of them. Every month for years. While you were booking a cruise and buying a motorcycle, I was writing checks for your truck, your SUV, your insurance, and every emergency bill you handed me like a receipt at a drive-through window. That is not generosity. That is arithmetic." Clint's voice dropped. He was not looking at me anymore. He was looking at his hands, the same way I have seen men look at tools that have just failed them. "We were going to pay you back," he said. "We talked about it. After the anniversary, we were going to sit down and figure out a plan." That was the confession. Not a full one. Not the kind that includes the words "I was wrong." But Clint had just admitted, standing on my front step, that they had known. They had known every month that I was paying, and they had chosen, consciously, to spend the savings on gifts for the children who were not paying. And they had planned to talk about it later. Later, after the cruise was booked, and the motorcycle was delivered, and the bills were in my folder, and the sentence "you were born to pay" had already left Judith's mouth in front of 12 people at a restaurant where the bread comes in a basket before you ask. "Mom," I said, "you texted me by accident 2 days ago. You meant to send it to Fern. It said Wyatt will handle them, he always does, lol." That was the moment I understood that this is not about bills or cars or money. It is about the fact that you divided your children into 2 categories 6 years ago. The ones you celebrate and the one you invoice. And I have been standing in the invoice column for 6 years without saying a word. I looked at both of them. 6 years, I have paid for your truck, your SUV, your homeowner's insurance, your dental bills, your water heater, your vet, Fern's bridesmaid dress, Mitch's phone bill, and every emergency you have handed me like a receipt at a gas station. None of it was ever a loan. None of it was ever acknowledged. Not one of you has ever said the word "thank you" out loud in my presence. You said I was born to pay. That was not an insult. That was your business model. And the business is closed. Judith's jaw tightened. She gripped her purse strap with both hands, and her fingers were shaking. Her shoulders pulled inward, and her chin dropped, and her eyes moved to the ground and stayed there. Clint put his hand on the porch railing. His knuckles were white. He opened his mouth, and the sound that came out was not a word. It was the beginning of a word that stopped before it became anything. $89,000, I said. 6 years. 2 cars in my name. You never asked me once whether I wanted to keep paying. You never asked because you already knew the answer. You were afraid I would say what I am saying right now. I looked at Clint. You said I cannot take the cars. But those cars were never yours, Dad. Your name is not on either title. It is not on either loan. It is not on either registration. The only name on those documents is mine. I did not take your cars. I took mine back. Judith tried. Her voice cracked, and she gripped the porch railing beside Clint, and I could see her knees lock as if standing had become something she needed to think about. "We will pay you back," she said. "We will figure something out. Just bring the cars back, and we can sit down like a family." "You had 6 years to sit down like a family," I said. "You used them to hand me folders. No more payments on your behalf. No more emergency checks. No more calling me when something breaks, because I am the one with tools and a checkbook. Fern has a cruise. Mitch has a motorcycle. You can ask them. This is the last conversation about money you and I will ever have." Clint opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He looked at Judith. She looked at the doorframe. Nobody said anything for 10 seconds. Then they walked back to Fern's car and drove away. Fern posted her cruise booking on social media 2 weeks later. She posted the itinerary, the cabin photos, the packing list. She posted a caption that said, "Best parents in the world. 35 years and still spoiling us." 42 likes in the first hour. Then a cousin named Stacy, Porter's daughter, commented. She wrote, "Beautiful trip." Quick question though. Did Wyatt get anything at the dinner? Or just the bills again? If you are still here, stay with me. This is Family Secret Tales. The endings are the part that matters. Fern deleted the comment. Stacy posted it again. This time she added, "I am asking because my dad told me Wyatt has been paying for both cars and the house insurance for 6 years, and he got a folder of overdue bills as his anniversary gift. Is that true?" Fern deleted it again and turned off comments. But 7 people had already screenshotted it. By Monday, 3 other family members had texted Judith asking if it was true. She did not respond to any of them. The fallout was not dramatic. It was slow and ordinary, and that made it worse. It was the sound of a family learning what happens when the person who held everything together decides to let go. Without the truck, Clint had to arrange rides to his part-time job at the hardware store. The first morning, he called Mitch. Mitch said the motorcycle only seated 1, and he was not going to strap a toolbox to the back of a Harley. He called Fern. Fern said she was busy planning the cruise and could not rearrange her mornings. He called a coworker and got rides for 2 weeks. After that, the coworker said he could not keep making the detour. Clint started taking the bus, the same bus. The one Judith had told me to take at the anniversary dinner. He stood at the stop in front of the pharmacy at 6:15 every morning with his lunch in a paper bag and his work vest over his arm, and he waited for a bus that came every 20 minutes and smelled like diesel and floor cleaner. Without the SUV, Judith could not drive to the grocery store or the hair salon or the church potluck she hosted every 3rd Thursday. She asked Fern to add her to the car insurance. Fern checked with her agent and said the rate increase was more than she could budget. She asked Mitch. Mitch did not answer the text. Judith called the church secretary and asked if someone could give her a ride on Sundays. The secretary said she would ask around. Nobody called back. The insurance company sent a cancellation notice after I stopped paying the homeowner's premium. Clint and Judith had 30 days to find a new carrier and pay the first installment themselves. They had never shopped for their own homeowner's insurance. They did not know what a declarations page looked like because I had handled it for 3 years. The quote they got from a new carrier was higher than what I had been paying. For the first time in 3 years, the premium was theirs to figure out. Judith sat at the kitchen table and stared at the quote for a long time. She did not call me about it. She knew better by then. I know this because Porter told me. He had gone to see Clint the following week, the way brothers do when one of them is standing in a house that is falling apart and the other one cannot look away. Porter sat in the kitchen and drank coffee and listened to Clint explain what had happened. When Clint finished, Porter said, "Your son paid $89,000 for your family over 6 years, and you gave him a folder of unpaid bills at a dinner where his sister got a cruise. What exactly did you think was going to happen?" Clint did not answer. He was standing by the garage door, the same door where I had taped the folder 3 weeks earlier. The tape marks were still on the paint, 2 strips of residue that would not come off without solvent. Clint looked through the window at the empty driveway where the truck and the SUV used to sit, side by side, every night. 2 vehicles that bore my name on every piece of paper, but that Clint had driven for years, as if his name were the one on the title. Then he caught his own reflection in the glass. Porter told me later that Clint stared at it for 3 or 4 seconds and then turned away from it. The way you turn away from a photograph of yourself that you do not recognize. He walked to the kitchen table and sat down and did not say another word for the rest of Porter's visit. 2 weeks after the confrontation, Judith called me. Her voice was different, not softer. Thinner, the voice of a person who has been rehearsing a conversation for days and has worn the words down to their weakest version. She said she had been having trouble sleeping. She said they were looking into financing a used car, but the rates were high because of their credit history. She said if I would bring the truck back, just the truck, not the SUV, she would make sure Clint made the payments himself this time. You told me I was born to pay, I said. That is the last thing you said to me at a table in front of 12 people, while your other children opened their gifts and I opened a folder of your unpaid bills. You do not get to renegotiate that sentence with a phone call, Mom. I did not hang up on her. I waited. She was breathing on the other end of the line, the kind of breathing that comes before crying or before giving up, and I was not sure which one she was closer to. Then she said, quietly, I should not have said that. No, I said, you should not have. But you did, and you meant it. And the text you accidentally sent me 2 days later proved you meant it. He always does, lol. That is not something a mother says about a son she respects. That is something a customer says about a vendor. She did not have an answer for that. I ended the call. The rest of April became something quieter. The folder Judith had given me at the anniversary dinner was still on my kitchen counter. I had taken the bills out weeks ago. The water bill, the gas bill, the insurance notice, the dental invoice, the vet bill, the note about the truck inspection. I had taken them all out, set them on the counter in a neat row, looked at them for a long time, and then I had put them in an envelope and mailed them back to my parents' address with no return address and no note. 6 bills. Their bills. Returned to the people whose names were on them. The folder was empty now. It sat on the counter next to my coffee mug, manila-colored, creased where Judith had folded it to fit under her chair at Rossini's, and completely hollow. It had arrived in my hands carrying 6 bills and 1 sentence that ended 6 years of silence. It left my hands carrying nothing because there was nothing left to carry. I thought about throwing it away. I decided not to. Not because it meant something. Because the emptiness of it meant something. A folder that used to hold other people's debts, sitting empty on a counter that belongs to a man who does not owe anyone anything anymore. I stood at my kitchen window on a Saturday morning in late April with coffee in my hand. The window was open. The air smelled like cut grass and the faint, clean bite of spring rain that had come and gone before sunrise. My truck was in the driveway. Not Clint's truck, not Judith's SUV, my truck. The one I bought with my own name and paid for with my own money and drove to my own job sites every morning for 9 years. The F-150 and the Equinox were still in the storage lot on Route 9. I had not decided what to do with them yet. Sell them, probably, pay off the remaining balances, and pocket whatever was left. Or not. The decision was mine because the titles were mine, and the loans were mine, and the keys were mine, and the only person who had any say in what happened to those vehicles was the person whose name was on every document. That person was me. It had always been me. Porter texted me that afternoon. 4 words. Your dad called me. I texted back. What did you tell him? I told him to call you, and I told him to bring a pen. I set the phone down. The folder was on the counter. The coffee was warm. The window was open. The air was coming in. The April light fell across the kitchen table where I had sat 6 years ago and signed the first loan for a man who never said thank you, and a woman who told me I was born to pay. For 6 years, I had been the wire that kept the lights on in a house that never once asked where the current came from. The wire does not get a thank you card. It does not get a cruise. It does not get a motorcycle or an envelope with a gold seal. It gets buried in the wall and forgotten until something stops working and someone calls the electrician. The lights were off now. Not because I failed. Because I pulled the wire. And the house will have to learn to find its own current. Or sit in the dark. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story reminded you that you are allowed to stop paying for people who never pay you back in any currency that counts, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Family Secret Tales. I will see you in the next one.